Hi. It is my pleasure to introduce our closing keynote speaker. Tiara A. Cash is a graduate student here in Vancouver, at SFU, or in Burnaby, I should say, where she works with Dr. Lara Aknin in the Helping and Happiness Lab on intersections of transitions, pro-social behaviors, and well-being. In addition to being a graduate student and researching in the lab, she owns an organization focused on mindfulness, meta-awareness, and meaning. And the name of her company is Crowned Vita. In her company, she conducts presentations, workshops, and consultations through an emerging framework, equitable mindfulness. Her career interests include working with traditionally underrepresented and underserved populations in Western systems and researching life transitions. She holds a master's degree from Western Illinois University, where she studied sports psychology, and a bachelor's from Arizona State University. Please help me welcome Tiara Cash.
All right. Halitopa Chia Hoke, Sahochifayat Tiara Cash, Lusa Maliki Michachata Sia Hoke, Chalegi descendant, Memphis, Tennessee, Amitali, Atali, Micha Simon Fraser, Atos Galili. I just introduced myself in one of my native languages. It's important that we do that in these spaces. There's only about 10,000 native speakers left, and so keeping and revitalizing these languages is really important to me. I also want to make sure that I thank NAACO and the organizers for letting me come and spend this hour with you. As mentioned, my name is Tiara Cash. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them, and I'm from the States, Memphis, Tennessee. I currently reside, I heard that out there. I currently reside on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, which has colonially been called Burnaby, Canada. And I've been a practicing meditator for over 20 years, and a practitioner of this work and DEI work for about 8. And I always start with giving this sort of introduction to make sure that I ground us and ground myself in the conversation as a background to the context with which we will be discussing today. So I want to start with solidarity statements. We call these acknowledgements, but I want to be clear that as guests and settlers, it's our duty to do more than just acknowledge. I work to do these solidarity statements as a practice, and so you'll see what I'm saying in just a moment. And I'll walk you through this 3-breath, 3 thank you practice. With these 3 thank yous, I want you to please consider 3 things. Who are the original people of this particular land and space? Who are the historical groups that helped to cultivate the economies and institutions that we serve, but who aren't always acknowledged or who aren't fairly compensated for those sacrifices? And then who are you and where do you come from? So I'll start by saying these thank yous. I'll acknowledge where we are in Vancouver, and then I'll invite you to close your eyes and to take a breath in with me and a breath out with me to thank these groups silently. So first, thank you to the individuals and lands, communities for which so-called Vancouver and the surrounding areas located, the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. May they be remembered and continue to be reconciled for their ownership, stewardship, and care of the space. I would also like to thank the people of enslavement, indentured servitude, and those subjected to human taxation within North America and within the North American contexts, who helped to build our economies, buildings, institutions, and actually many of the universities that we have the privilege of serving in. May they be remembered for their sacrifice and honor. And then finally, I'd like to thank each of our ancestors in this room for doing the collective work to make sure that we could be here so that we could share today and gather today. May each of us be their wildest dreams. So now I'll invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. As always, a soft gaze to the floor is fine as well. And we'll just take in a breath in together and out together on my command to thank these groups silently. So breathe in. Thank you to the indigenous peoples whose lands we are currently gathering and breathe out. Breathe in. Thank you to the enslaved, indentured, and those subjected to human taxation who built economies, institutions, and buildings. Breathe out. And breathe in. Thank you to each of our ancestors for doing the work for us to be here. And breathe out. Now I'll invite you to keep your eyes closed for just a moment, finding a comfortable seat. The invitation is to find a position that allows you to show up with the greatest care, one that gives you comfort, one that allows you to show up in the right way. I'll ask you to find your breath in your body, maybe the stomach, the chest, or the nostrils. And as you just notice this in-breath and this out-breath, I want you to know that we welcome you into this space. Welcome who you are today and who we've brought with you. We welcome your strength and your struggles. We welcome all the identities that you've brought into this space, your race, ethnicity, background, age, body shape, sexual orientation, gender identity, disabilities, abilities, the money you have or don't. We welcome them all into this space. And I'm going to read this short poem just to show you how much we welcome you and the space that we're going to create together. It's called An Invitation to Brave Space. Keeping eyes closed and continuing to breathe, listening to these words. Together we will create a brave space. Because there's no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify the voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow, but we have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. Taking one last deep grounding breath, keeping this same energy and these intentions as we share this space together in community, bringing your body back online, opening your eyes and coming back into the room. Okay. Thank you for engaging in those practices with me. I like to say we're really here now. All right. So I've created a bit of a roadmap for us today. And I've included some guiding questions for you to think about as we travel on this journey. And I want to be very transparent as we do this work today. This work is inner work. A lot of the work that will be done today will be done through conversation in a lot of ways. Conversation with yourself, conversation with others. So be prepared for that. As we prepare, here are some things that I want you to remember. First, everything today is an invitation, okay? Anything that I ask you to do, you are invited to do, but you do not have to do. Second, this might be a very different keynote than you've participated in the past, or it may not be. But either way, whatever shows up for you is good, okay? I want you to lean into what you're feeling and to feel like you're a part of whatever comes up for you, which means that I want you to engage in this work with me. The third thing is that my job here today is to validate you. And I hope that you leave with something new, but my primary role in this conversation as your facilitator is to make sure that you understand that you've been going through a lot these past 2 years. And so whatever's been coming up for you is valid. Whatever feelings you have is valid. But I'm also going to give you some tools, hopefully, that help you to move through what's been happening for the past few years, okay? So let's start off with a conversation that might not always be fun to start with, grief. What is grief? Why is this a pivotal time? Well, we just went through and in many of our own rights are actually still going through one of the worst pandemics in recorded human history. The pandemic left us hugless, many of us away from our families. It left us in terror, many of us getting ill or knowing someone who got severely ill or even having people transition because of this virus. It also left us knowing our friends and neighbors probably a bit more than we ever really wanted to be honest, because we quarantined together. And on top of it all, each of you had to be very creative about the way you did your jobs. Many of us having to move online, having to reimagine what our roles look like. And as convocation professionals, many of you had to figure out how to give students one of the best memories they'll ever have on Zoom or through YouTube. Wow. And we don't talk about this enough. We really, really don't. But we're grieving. We have experienced many losses in many ways, and we're grieving people, we're grieving family structures, we're grieving roles and positions, but most of all, we're grieving the parts of ourselves that we'll never get back. Something changed in all of us as we went through this pandemic, and we had to become different versions of ourselves to make it through. And so now we're working on trying to merge our new selves and our new roles with our old selves and our old roles, and so we're grieving. So I want to talk a little bit about what grieving looks like. So how does grief show up in your body? Okay, just shout out some answers. Extroverts, this is your time. Headaches. Weight gain, weight loss. Exhaustion, yes. Tears, absolutely. Backaches, oh. Shoulders, stomach aches. Irritability, yes, and that actually is transitioning us to the next question, which is how do we express grief, right? Irritability, what else? Depression, yes. Avoidance, y'all are hitting the nail on the head. Denial. Anything else? Confusion, absolutely. So we can see from these answers that grief shows up in our bodies and in our minds in very similar ways that what? Stress does. I study transition stress, and through challenging times, studies have shown that we go through many changes in our bodies, in our minds, in the ways in which we talk to folks and in our conversations. Studies have shown that people have higher levels of anxiety, depression, and extreme loneliness. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and then talk about ways that we can change this. So in thinking about how this manifests, it manifests in our conversations just as we talked about, as irritation, as resistance, as avoidance, right? Shutting down, not wanting to deal with any of it. And this is fair, right? I've told you at the beginning, my role is to validate you. So first I want to say, yeah, I get it. This is fair. These emotions and feelings have a source and a place. But I also want to play this short video because gaining a hold over your stress, gaining a hold over this grief, acknowledging it, actually being with it, has more power than we might know. And if we don't work on getting a hold of this, it could affect generations to come. So I want you to take a look at this.
Are you sleeping restlessly? Feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all, though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you. Okay, I promise I didn't come here to ruin your life, okay? That was heavy, I know. But it was needed. We needed to have a conversation about what stress does not only to you, but what it does to people you're around, what it does to your children or your family, what it does to your coworkers, right? These things are really important that we acknowledge what stress actually means in terms of the ways in which, again, we communicate, the ways in which we act around other folks. So as you can see, holding on to this grief, having this collective stress, and not working through the challenges in this life transition can not only affect issues in our bodies, but can affect the people in our lives around us. So the counter to this question becomes, how do we create space for community wellness and center joy in our lives, right? How do we actually do something to make sure that this stress and this collective grief isn't what's ruling our lives? Well, just like we do when we're grieving, we have to start by acknowledging the grief and creating space for acceptance. And this is where this transition comes in. So many of you have already started this work already, this transition work. Or today may actually be the first time you're looking at this and giving yourself permission to acknowledge that you're in a transition, because you are. It's a secret, but we all are. And this is what it looks like for you. But after this acknowledgement, you have to stand firmly then in the knowledge that we can use these pockets of grief to create these pockets of joy.
So this is one of my favorite quotes by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor who, as you probably can understand, had many, many spaces of grief and transitions, but also used pauses to find pockets of joy. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our own growth and our own freedom. And I love this quote, but I'm going to challenge it just a little bit, because I believe that it's not only in our pauses and in our spaces that our own growth lies, but I believe that there's power and freedom for others that lie in our pauses and in our spaces. And one visible way of me interpreting this for you all is through this expansive model of mindfulness. This model was created by one of my former colleagues at ASU and I, Dr. NACCO, and it shows how the practice of present moment experiences, or those pauses where we can create and catch the joy as it flies by, can really help us to do the same thing for others. This model shows that there can really be a ripple effect, not only in bringing us wellness and joy when we do this work, but it also travels outward toward our students, toward our faculty and staff, our community, and eventually the broader humanity. And so, just as we experience collective grief, just as we're transitioning collectively, we can also practice collective joy, cultivating what it means to have collective wellness. And so I'm going to give you a few practices to help you do that today. And this first practice is going to involve you talking to other people. So introverts, this is not your time. I apologize, but it'll be fun, I promise. So this first activity I'd like for you to do is a joyful communication activity. This is an activity that I actually suggest should be done at least once a week with your coworkers and with people who you're frequently around, but who you don't always get the chance to experience joy with. This can be done at the beginning of meetings, while walking to lunch, in many different ways. So your task right now is to find a partner. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of time to do that. This can be the person sitting next to you, or if you're feeling really brave, you can get up and find someone new in the room. But when you do, please take a moment to look up at me so I know that you're ready. So first, find a partner. If you haven't introduced yourself to that person, introduce yourself. Found a partner? Fantastic. Sounds like everyone is ready. Okay, so I want you to take a moment now to close your eyes and to think of something really exciting that's either already happened to you or that will be happening to you soon. Okay, so close your eyes, take a deep breath. I want you to really imagine yourself there. What does the room smell like? If you're outside, is the sun shining? How does the weather feel? Is someone else there with you? What's happening? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. With your partner, choose who'll speak first. And I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to speak to the other person. I want the other person to do nothing but listen. Okay, I want you to hold space. I want you to do no responding. I just want you to hold space and let them talk to you, and you can smile, which normally I don't let people do, so you're lucky. You can smile and you can nod, but you can say nothing, okay? Here we go. 2 minutes on the clock, go. 1 more minute. Seconds. All right, wrap up that conversation and go ahead and switch partners. One more minute. You can go ahead and wrap that conversation up. Yeah, I like this. The fact that you want to keep talking is good. But wrap it up, wrap it up. There we go, yeah, great. You have more time to talk after this, I promise. All right. Yay, right? Okay. First, how does your body feel? Shout it out.
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Energized. Light. Nice. You see the differences between how we feel with grief and how we feel now? Okay, how do you feel emotionally? Tell me some things that you talked about.
Beyonce.
That is exciting. If y'all got tickets, I'm gonna come see y'all after. What else? Excited. You feel excited. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are like really exciting coming up, and it felt good. Was that hard for anyone? 2 minutes. It's a long time to talk. Yes, thank you for being honest. I feel you, right? So I'm also, you may not know, but I'm also an introvert, and it's really hard for me to talk at somebody who's not talking back to me for 2 minutes. So I get that. So thank you for engaging in that practice. But I wanted to make sure that I gave you an opportunity to see how you can do this, how you can find and cultivate little small pieces of joy in your life as you're working, as you're, finding lunch, as you're doing things with your colleagues. These are ways that you can do this. So, I have one more practice that I'm going to share with you, but before I do that, I want to share a few tips and tricks with you. I want to show you more ways to cultivate joy in your life and find small pauses that you can do outside of this particular space. So the first is to cultivate being a mindful leader. So my former friend, she's not a formal friend, she's still my friend, but my former colleague, Dr. Sophia Town, she interviewed a plethora of mindful leaders and in many fields around the world. And she found out that they had three things in common. There were three things that they did. And it helps them be better people at work, and it also helped them to be better people at home. And so the first thing that they did was to build a both and philosophy. And this means that instead of looking at something as being either this or that, you can create a larger, broader, more robust way of capturing an idea or a particular thing. And this helps you in considering policies, procedures, when talking to students, when you had that really crazy email that somebody sent to you and you're about to read them their life. Maybe it's not about you at all. Maybe something else happened. And so it's a both and situation. But these are all ways that help you to be a better mindful leader. The second is taking an intentional pause, right? We just did one of those things right now. We took an intentional pause to talk about excitement. And this can be done in many ways and in many instances in your life. But simply, it's just taking a pause before making any decision or responding to anything. And this isn't just something that I suggest to help in negative moments. It's also really good for positive moments. So when something joyful happens, just simply be there. Taking a pause and recognizing what happens in the moment really helps you to ground in whatever is going on, no matter what they might be. And then finally, she said to practice self-care. And yes, there are many ways that we can practice self-care. There are so many things out there that we talk about around self-care. It's honestly a word that I don't really use that often anymore because it's so, in a sense, politicized. But self-care can also just be saying no, okay? It can be creating boundaries. It can be taking mental health days, right? Especially as we go through this transition. So be kind to yourself. That's basically what self-care is. Be gentle, be gracious, and understand that what we're going through right now in life globally is challenging. So give yourself as much grace as you possibly can. The second thing is to start small. So take 2 to 3 breaths when you can. Right? Especially if something has flustered you in the moment, just take 2 to 3 breaths. I promise there is actually a nerve in our body, the vagus nerve, that when we take breaths, we stimulate and it actually responds and it helps us to move this cortisol around in our body. It helps us to feel better in those moments. So taking 2 to 3 breaths actually physiologically changes the way that we are in that moment, okay? Take 2 to 3 breaths. When walking between meetings, notice how your foot lifts off the ground or how it goes back on the ground. Take some mindful walking when you're going between meetings or going to get lunch or talking on the way to the water cooler, as we say. And then utilize affirmations. So I have 3 places where I keep affirmations. One is in my emails. Anytime I'm sent an email that talks about my character or where someone thanks me for something that I did and it makes me feel good in that moment, I put it in an affirmations folder. So on days that I'm feeling down or I need to pick me up, I look there and remind myself why I'm doing this work. The second thing is to have affirmations around your house. And so for me, what this looks like is utilizing birthday cards, Christmas cards, thank you cards as decorations. So when I'm feeling down, I can literally go to my wall and remind myself that I have people who love me. So this is another way to have affirmations. And then the third is to have them in my phone. So I keep text messages from people in a photo album. And when I'm on the go and something happens and I need to pick me up, it's always there. So these are 3 places that you can have affirmations. Affirmations aren't just statements that you say to yourself. They can be statements that other people say about you as well, okay? And then finally, one of my favorite ways to cultivate joy is through pro-sociality, or giving back to others. And one thing that I think is really vital about your roles is that you do this anyway. Your whole departments are focused on creating spaces of joy and creating spaces of excitement for matriculation. So first and foremost, don't forget that. Keep that in the forefront of your mind as you're doing this work. But also, if you can give back daily, studies have shown that this actually gives back to you as well. It helps to boost your happiness, your thriving, your flourishing. It reduces anxiety, depression, and loneliness. So give back. This can be through gratitude notes. So write some of those cards like we're talking about to other folks. Telling a cashier how grateful you are for their help today. Picking up trash off the street. Opening the door for someone. There are many, many things that you can do that show to boost your well-being. So give back whenever you have the chance. And I promise you it'll make you feel better. All right. Now, before we close and we move on to the question and answer phase, I do want to give you all one more activity, which is one of my favorite activities to share as well. And this is a practice that really brings all of the elements that we've been discussing today together. It's a way for you to practice intentional pauses. It's a way for you to create affirmations for yourself and others. And it's a way to give back through a personal practice that you have with yourself. So this practice is called Just Like Me. And for this practice, what I want you to do is to find another comfortable seat. And if you're comfortable, close your eyes as well, or again, a soft gaze to the floor is fine. And I want you to think about one person in your life that you've been having just a little difficulty with, okay? I don't want you to start with the person that you would trade on the crossroads to the devil. Please don't, okay? Start with somebody that is just a little bit irritating. And when you've thought of that person, go ahead and close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths, relaxing your body. Noticing the seat of your chair. And become aware of that person that you're thinking about as if they were sitting in front of you. And recognize that this person is a fellow human being, just like you. And silently repeat these phrases to your partner. This person has a body and a mind, just like me. This person has feelings, emotions, and thoughts, just like me. This person has in his or her or their lives experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering, just like me. This person has at some point been sad, disappointed, angry, or hurt, just like me. This person has felt unworthy or inadequate sometimes, just like me. This person worries and is frightened, just like me. This person has longed for friendship, just like me. This person is learning about life, just like me. This person wants to be caring and kind to others, just like me. This person wants to be content with what life has given them, just like me. This person wishes to be free from pain and from suffering, just like me. This person wishes to be safe and healthy, just like me. And this person wishes to be happy and loved, just like me. Now, for a moment, just allow some well wishes for well-being to arise by saying these words to them. I wish that this person have the strength resources, and social support to navigate the difficulties of life with ease. I wish that this person be free from suffering and pain. I wish that this person be peaceful and happy. And I wish that this person be loved. Because this person is a fellow human being, just like me. Now you can silently thank your partner for having that quick moment with them. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. All right. So thank you all for taking the time to be with me and for allowing me to give you a couple of tools on ways to cultivate joy, excitement in your life as we're navigating through grief and this collective idea of suffering. I hope there were some fruitful things that I shared, and I'm really excited to answer any questions that you might have as well. But I also like to end with a poem, and I wanted to end with this poem for you all, because I wanted to remind you that if nothing else, you in this moment and in this time are enough. Okay? So this poem is called Enough by David White. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to life we have refused again and again until now. Until now. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. My contact information is here. Thank you for letting me be here with you. All right. So I think we have time for questions. Fantastic. I'm not sure if anyone has any about what we talked about today or other ways. Oh, yes, someone's coming up to the mic.
So Liza Elritz, Northwestern University. In a lot of our meetings, we try and start with some sort of lighthearted check-in, how are people doing, or maybe a silly question to sort of get people out of, okay, we are all business all the time, acknowledging that we're people. But I find in some meeting spaces that I'm in, I need to take that back, because if I start with something like that, people won't take me seriously, even though to me, that is a very serious thing in addition to our business. So any advice for that?
That's a really, really great question. Thank you for bringing it up. I think that there's two things that I kind of want to say in response to that. The first is that we are the culture change, right? Culture won't change unless we initiate it. So the first thing is that you're doing the job, you're doing the work by allowing yourself to, start this meeting with some sort of grounding, with some sort of question. And there's always going to be resistance to culture change, because that is the norm. By doing a change to a culture, you're challenging the norm. So, first, just be aware that there's going to be resistance, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what I also say is that when I come into meetings, and just like I did here, when I come into meetings, when I come into presentations, whatever, and I don't think we need to do this, but I think it's important for folks who are skeptical, I always come with some sort of facts. I always come with a reason why this particular thing can help, right? So even if it's coming into the meeting space and saying, here's an article for you folks in the room who may not know why this can help, but this helps to, make sure that folks feel like they're a part of the culture when we're starting. Or studies have shown that by starting off with a question, it allows people to be more present in the room. Whatever that may be, it does help when you do facts. I think the third thing is, I'm serious. right? And I think you are too when you come in the room. So people are gonna take me seriously because I'm a serious person. And if I'm coming into the room with the attitude that this particular thing is going to work, then I think people will see that and will hold space for that. So I really appreciate that question, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
What about on the opposite end? If maybe you did the work at the beginning but it was a tough meeting?
Yeah.
You know, things came up or maybe everyone didn't agree?
Yes.
On how things were working out. Do you have a suggestion for a closure to a session like
Yes.
that?
And actually, I don't know, so you probably noticed this too with what I just did, but anytime I have an opening, I always have a closing. And the reason why is because I believe in creating containers. So what I mean by that is the space that we're doing this work within is a container. We all have some sort of facilitation, some sort of role within this container, and I want to be able to close that container so that people can take that with them, but in a way where they don't feel like they're so emotionally attached to the container. Right? So that was really meta, but basically the whole reason why I'm saying that is because I think closings are also important. So if you open a meeting with some sort of question, if you open the meeting with some sort of, sitting practice, I think closing the meeting is just as equally important. That can be through a poem, it can be through asking another question, it can be just checking in, asking people how they feel. I often ask this question now because I think that it's a better question than how are you doing? I ask, how is your heart? So at the end of a meeting, again, it may feel woo-woo, but that's okay because we're changing culture, right? How is your heart? And if somebody's like, man, my heart, I'm mad, I'm hurting, we can talk more about that. We can give space for that. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't ask that question. So I think closings are equally as important.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes.
I'm just curious if, I really liked the exercises that you shared today, and I'm curious if so many of us in the room work with university-age students.
Yes.
And also maybe have in our non-work lives teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah, that are like two very different types of like myself, I would say. So do you have any suggestions around exercises or things to draw from those two types of age groups?
Yes, so college students actually really like a lot of the work that I was doing today. So when I used to work at ASU, a lot of the practices that I shared with you all today were a lot of the practices that we would share with the students. And they loved these practices. I think students are at an age where they can find an easier time for them to connect with themselves, especially if you give them tools to do that, then really we are as folks who are past that stage, right? So that's the first thing. With teenagers, teenagers are in that rebellious stage. So I'm saying that to say too, because I grew up meditating and my sister hated it, but only because she was rebellious. Like her whole thing was like, I'm not doing it because dad said we should, right? So a part of it is that you have to meet people where they are. So if this teenager is ready to have some sort of an engagement in these practices, then I think that, it's important to share some of these things. I have other practices on my website as well that aren't as, and excuse my language, soft, I guess you can say, in the sense of like really nurturing the heart and nurturing places within us that are a little more emotional. There are other practices that are just a little bit more grounded and that talk more about like being in the moment, in the space more, in a more robust way. So that's a place that I would start. And also apps. So teenagers love apps. And if you can download some apps that help them to do these affirmations daily or some other things that are cool, like Londrell is someone that I follow, that's a good place to start as well. But meeting people where they are is really important, which is why I started with an invitation. Because I don't think that forcing any sort of work like this on anyone is gonna help anyone. So I think that we have to be able to open ourselves up to the possibility of people saying no to these type of invitations and being like, that's okay, I planted the seed and whatever happens, it's on you. You can water it or not. Thank you.
the way we interact with one another and the way we can put some of this work into play is different when you're doing it live versus in this virtual world that we live in?
Wow, it's a really good question, and one that I've been thinking a lot about since a lot of the work that I've been doing is transitioned online too. I think my answer to that question will be that intentions are important. And so if the intention is genuine, no matter which space you're in, people feel that. And I think that that's just the end of that. Like, I have had a lot of these, type of presentations and keynotes and conversations online where I've had some of the best responses I've ever had because the intentions were there, because people showed up into the space. We created a container where people were allowed to feel whatever was coming up for them, and it worked really well. And the flip side, I've had spaces live where it was the opposite. So I think it all comes to intentions and how genuine we are in creating those spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else before we? Yes.
When you talk about self-care, for myself, I know I should be doing certain things, but I think we all have a crunch.
Yes.
Where we will just work, never stop. I have people in my office say, did you eat today? Did you go to the bathroom today? Because it's just like, we have to do what we have to do. Because commencement time and day is going to happen whether I'm ready for it or not. How do you train yourself to even take 5 minutes without that guilt or that I could be answering this email, but I need to breathe. Like I have people that tell me to breathe.
No, exactly. No. But I think you said something that's really key, right? The reason why we call mindfulness and meditation practices is because they're practices. You have to train yourself to do this work. And it's going to start by you having grief, by you having shame around this, because you've been conditioned. The world, the society has conditioned you to believe that in this workspace, you are a robot, that you do not have the opportunity or space to take care of your bodily functions, to take care of your mind and your heart in those spaces. But the thing is that's simply not true. So the first is you have to carve out for those 5 minutes, and you have to sit with that shame and that grief. And I hate to say that, I know that wasn't what you thought I was, but that's the truth. You gotta sit with it first. Eventually, you might as well, right? You might as well. But eventually it starts to quiet itself, right? Like these things have a mind of their own. We call them monkey mind, but they start to quiet themselves. So the more that you practice, the more that you give yourself the space to have those 5 minutes, the more that you sit with this grief and you sit with this angst, the less loud they are. The more quiet they are, the more it feels like joy is coming from those particular spaces. So keep doing it. That would be my advice to you. You're welcome.
Hi, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I really appreciated how you talked about the moment that we're in now as a moment of transition, because I think for me and maybe for a lot of us in this room, we went from, pandemic time to not pandemic time.
Right.
And that was just very quick. And I think there are still, for years, we're going to see sort of echoing impacts. So
yeah.
I guess my question is, how should we or should we pull that in the next couple of years, 5 years? Are we still thinking about this, and are we bringing people how do we bring people into the reminder that this thing happened? Or is it more like, let's move forward and not really think about that anymore?
That's a really heavy question, and I thank you for bringing it up. I'll say this. We're currently in Black History Month, and a part of the work of Black History Month is to both ground in the past, to be present in what's happening right now, and to dream up Afrocentric futures, right? And I think it's gonna be the exact same thing with what we have to do with the pandemic. We cannot move on into a different space without acknowledging how this has affected us, how it's affecting us right now, and how it will affect us in the future. but also how we can create, again, and cultivate these spaces of collective joy and health and wellness and healing in the future, and how we're doing that now. And so there has to be this both and conversation that we talked about on there as well, that we ground in both of these things. We can't, that's why I'm really happy to be here. We can't have a conversation about what, commencement looks like in April if we don't have a conversation about what it looks like last April. Those things have to be at the same time. We have to have those dual conversations, and we have to grieve what has happened. So I'm saying all of that to summarize, I think that it's going to be very important that we keep this at the forefront of the conversation while also talking about how it's affecting us now and what futures we can create outside of the pandemic. One more question. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any burning questions? I'm looking at that side of the room because everyone's come from this side. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again.
Tiara, thank you so much. I think I can't think of a better way to have ended our time together, to have these tools to take away, and also to have been able to talk about something, exciting, and that brings us joy. So I hope this brings you a bit of joy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, NACCO. What an amazing 3 days we've had here all together in Vancouver, the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. When we began our time together on Monday, we collectively acknowledged, we can have the house lights up a little. I wouldn't mind seeing everyone. We collectively acknowledged those who have contributed their time and talents to our association in formal ways this year. Over the course of the last 3 days, I've been reminded that NACCO's foundations are at their strongest when we come together. And so I would also like to take this time to recognize each and every one of you for strengthening the bedrock of our association by participating this week. Thank you for making connections. Over the last 3 days, I've made lots of new connections and reconnected with many others. It has been a long 3 years, and it has been wonderful to greet old friends, see people who were previously only Zoom squares, and to meet so many new members. Connections are at the heart of our association, and that includes our corporate partners who continue to enthusiastically support NACCO and its members. And it was wonderful to be able to connect with members in our region. I know there's some really excellent conversations yesterday at our regional meetings, so thank you for participating in those. Thank you for the inspiration. This week, you participated in 18 educational sessions, 2 keynotes, and both formal and informal networking. And I hope that you all return to your work energized and inspired by what you've learned. I'm also inspired that this was the first NACCO conference for many of you and how enthusiastically you participated. We're so glad that you found your professional home. Many of our speakers were motivated to present by what they learned at previous NACCO events. So perhaps you're also inspired to share how you incorporated your new knowledge or idea at a future conference or a Hot Topics call. And don't forget that you can bring the conference back to your colleagues at your institution, as well as watch educational sessions you missed by purchasing a virtual pass. Thank you for expanding your horizons. Our keynote presenters and educational sessions have given me the opportunity to think beyond what I might have thought was possible, including that taking care of myself will make me a better leader and colleague. And last night we had a wonderful opportunity to see a great representation of the endless possibilities ahead of us while we were at the top of Grouse Mountain with the Vancouver skyline and beyond laid out before us. So thank you, all of you, for being here. And now I'd like to invite my fellow board members, Jim Vitagliano and James Kresma, to join me to help announce where the NACCO Annual Conference will take us in 2025 and 2026. So, James, where are you?
Yeah, I'm right here.
I hear you might know a thing or two about where we might be going in 2025. Do you want to share a few hints?
Sure. Well, let's see. From 1902 to 1920, it was the fastest growing city in the United States. An earthquake struck this city in 1933, and it was rebuilt in an Art Deco style which remains prominent throughout its downtown today. It hosts an annual Grand Prix that started in 1975. It's the home to the former luxury cruise ship, the Queen Mary. And in 2013, it celebrated the opening of the Harvey Milk Park and Equality Square, completing the renovation of the promenade walkway through the center of downtown with public art, restaurants, and open air patios. And more importantly, Snoop Dogg is from there. Maybe we should just show them to our members right now.
That's right. We are headed to Long Beach in 2025. Thanks so much, James, for giving us a bit of a taste of what's in store there just down the road from where you live. And now, Jim, I think you have a few clues to share about our 2026 conference. There you are.
Yeah, here I am. Yes, I do. Well, it is the home to the United States' first public beach, which was opened in 1896. It's also where the first public park in the U.S. was established. In 1919, believe it or not, this city experienced the first and only Great Molasses Flood. But maybe more important than that is that this city was home to the first chocolate factory in the country. And in 1990, the biggest art heist ever took place in this city when $500 million worth of paintings were stolen But don't worry, it is still an epicenter of culture. And really, it's a city of firsts because it is also home to the first college in the United States, which was founded in 1636. If you haven't already figured it out by now, the accent might have given it away.
이거는 내 버스턴 억양이에요.
You hear that? This is my Boston accent.
This is my Boston accent.
Yeah, it is.
Shh. This is my Boston accent.
This is our Boston accent. Hear it for yourself, discover your own. This is Boston, and we are all inclusive.
Yeah.
We are really looking forward to returning to Boston in 2026. Thank you so much, Jim. And as we previously announced, we are thrilled to be heading back to Texas next year to bring NACCO to Fort Worth in 2024.
As mayor of the nation's 12th largest city, I am proud to welcome you to Fort Worth, Texas. This is the best place to experience Texas hospitality while you relax, take care of business, or a bit of both. We've preserved the history that put us on the map more than 100 years ago. See the world's only twice-daily cattle drive and explore the beautifully restored Mule Alley in the famous stockyards. We've made it easy to do business here with commuter rail from DFW Airport into the heart of downtown. You'll find hotels and the convention center connected by charming blocks of restaurants, entertainment, and Sundance Square Plaza. If you're like me, you'll also want to save some time for yourself. Just minutes from your meeting, the Cultural District includes 5 world-class museums, the beautiful Botanic Garden, and the nearby Fort Worth Zoo, ranked one of the best in the nation. Fort Worth nights are special, with the neighborhoods to explore and dozens of great music halls where you can hear the new sounds of Texas. It's not just for cowboys and cowgirls. Fort Worth is the modern West.
We look forward to seeing you in Fort Worth from February 12th to 14th next year. Look for the call for educational sessions proposals later in the coming months, and registration will launch later this year. It is now my honor to welcome Jim back to the podium for an update on our NACCO Cares charity.